Well, Chiefs Kingdom, nobody likes to beat you better than the Raiders, and there's no one that you want to beat more, right? Well, how do they match up with the Kansas City Chiefs in 2022? What's changed? It's actually quite a lot. If you missed yesterday's show, I actually forgot the biggest acquisition. We're going to talk about him first today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, friends and neighbors, and yeah, even you Raiders fans. That's okay. I know you guys are listening. You don't want to tell us, but that's okay. You're going to enjoy this anyway. We are here. It is the last of our interdivisional matchup shows because we want to see where they are. We're going to get into all the details today. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting. You've heard me on the Locked On NFL Draft Show. You can read and get all the information you need at Rogue APC and NFL33.com. You can watch RGR as well. You can find me at just about everywhere with the Ryan Tracy NFL tag on Twitter.
Yeah, and you are just about everywhere, aren't you? I am Chris Clark. You can find me over at Chiefs Corner, and we are going to talk about the guy that we both forgot about yesterday. My question to you, and I guess this is where we'll start real quick. How long do you think he is the best division, or he is the best wide receiver in this division? Because I'm not so sure it lasts more than maybe 2 years.
I will put it this way. I don't have his contract information in front of me, but Davante Adams will be the best receiver in this division until he leaves this division. That's my thought, because I don't think it's more than a single contract is my thought.
I agree with that. I just don't know that he's going to be the same wide receiver this year that he's going to be in 2 more years. So in year 3, which I think he'll still be in Las Vegas, I'm not so sure he'll still be that same guy.
What is he?
He'll
Davante
be on
Adams
the other side
is
of 30.
29, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he's right on the edge.
Right.
Now.
Right. So that's why I do agree with you. I think he is the number 1 receiver in this division. We both forgot him yesterday. So sorry about that. But the question is going to be for how long. But there's a lot to talk about when we get into this conversation about the Raiders versus the Chiefs.
Yeah. I mean, and let's start on the offensive side because it is about acquisitions there. We will talk about the big elephant in the room on offense in a minute. But Davante Adams is the big thing. Now, he set the market. Like, kudos to Josh McDaniels, who has input. But I think his name is Dave Ziegler. Yeah, I always say I get him and Dave Craig confused all the time. I don't know why. But kudos to him and his staff. Sean Herrick's on there. You guys may have heard of him as well. Brad Goldsberry's on there as well. So there's a couple of names that are familiar around the league that they put together a decent group there. And they went out and got the guy that they felt at the time deserved the biggest contract for being the best receiver in football. He is actually the guy that I ranked number 1 at wide receiver going into the 2021 season, just barely ahead of Tyreek Hill. So, like, in terms of like getting a guy at his peak, maybe just coming off the peak, I think they did a really good job. Now, the contract's a different story. You paid through the nose to have a weapon like that for Carr, and we'll talk about Carr in the next segment. But I have to give them credit. They came into a situation, especially after all the mess with Gruden and with Mark Davis, complicit and whatnot, and the whole thing with the league. They went out and they got things done. They saw an opportunity to get themselves into the arms race that is the AFC West this offseason because every team came gunning to try to keep up with the Chiefs. I think they did one of the better jobs in getting themselves weapons, including Adams.
Yeah, and I think Adams is a great get for the Raiders. And it sounds like, from what I've read at least a couple of different places, that Adams was maybe in talks to go to the Raiders last year. And, it didn't end up working out, but that would have been interesting to see that end up going that direction. But, for him to be in Las Vegas and to him, for him being there for the amount of money he's getting, I think they did a great job getting him. I think they did a great job on what they paid Green Bay because they actually paid less than Miami paid for Tyreek. So, thank you for that. I don't know how that worked out for Kansas City better than it did, but because I agree, I think Davante Adams probably was the best wide receiver last year. And I don't know that it was really – I think it was close with Hill, but I don't think it was extremely close. He was just the best wide receiver, and that's all there is to it. But again, I go back to what I said before. Longevity-wise, that's going to be something you have to be worried about and how that's going to work. And the bigger question for me isn't necessarily longevity this year. It's more of how does he fit in this offense? How are they going to use him? How are they going to get him involved in this offense? And is he able to pick up where he left off in Green Bay? Because he had a great relationship with Aaron Rodgers. He played with Derek Carr before, so I think that's going to work to his advantage, and I think they'll have chemistry. But he's still got to get acclimated to whatever their offense is going to be, and they're all going to be learning something new this year.
Yeah, that's fair. And, and we'll talk about Carr in particular. The adjustment for Adams, I don't think he's going to be earth-shattering. He at this age, I think he's going to be just fine in making that. Mick Lombardi's going to be calling their plays, as I understand. I mean, you're working for an offensive coordinator, head coach. So, I mean, are you really going to be calling the plays? Is it about design versus call? Whatever. I don't think that's going to be an issue. I think. But yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say the thing that's really going to stick out to me, and I know we're going to talk about Carr in a second, but the thing that really made Adams what he was in Green Bay was Aaron Rodgers' willingness for him to allow him to go do what he does best. And that is something that Carr doesn't have. So how is that going to change Adams' game? And how is that going to change what he's able to do and what he's able to bring to the Raiders?
Well, there's a couple of other things on the offensive side that I think are going to help that. They have a good run game. Josh Jacobs, I think, has been used pretty heavily so far. They have Kenyon Drake as well. They just drafted Zamir White, who I think is really under-heralded in terms of what he's going to bring to the offense. So, they have the run game. If they choose to put their head down and do what has worked for them in the last couple of seasons by running the ball repeatedly, that could be problematic. But at the end of the day, passing wins ball games in the NFL. There's just no other way around it. We're going to talk about their pass catchers and their quarterback here right after this because they've been putting a lot of pieces together in order to build this thing. And if you want to go and see exactly where you think they're going to finish, you might be able to put some money down on it over at BetOnline because that's where you get all your info. That gives you everything that you need to get your money on the line in a way that brings you more money home. That's the goal. Now that the playoffs are over for the NBA and the NHL, you can also bet on boxing and golf and baseball. I would argue that baseball is probably the slowest paced of all of those. So do what you like there. But it is the best spot to get all the information that you need, the podcast, the extra information so that you can be smart in the money you put down. So head over there to the website. It's super easy to get to from any place. It's BetOnline, where the game starts. Where the game starts and ends in the NFL is in the passing game. And yes, Adams is the head of that. It's really interesting behind that because I think much like we talked about the Broncos yesterday, I think the biggest strength in terms of matchup might be at the tight end position because Darren Waller's very, very good. He has given the Chiefs some problems before. But I like Foster Moreau, too. I think much like the Broncos, they have a 1-2 punch. It's going to be difficult. If they're smart, they run the ball and they go two tight end heavy formations a lot. And that'll feed into something in a minute. But do you agree with that?
I think it's something that Kansas City's going to have to worry about. Darren Waller is probably a top 4 or 5 tight end for me. And you could easily make a argument he's top 3.
Yeah.
I think he's a fantastic tight end. I think he brings a lot to this Raiders team. The question I'm going to have is, and I really should have said this yesterday when it comes to the Broncos as well, is Kansas City has been decimated by the tight end at times over the past several years. You have to figure at some point they're going to get that figured out and they're going to address it and they're going to get something changed. So while I agree Waller and Moreau could be issues for them, I think Kansas City is probably going to have something in line for that position this year, especially against a team like the Raiders, who, you're right, can play those 2 tight end sets, and that could be problematic if they don't have a defense or a way to attack the tight end and take them out of the ball game.
The answer to that question is WGJ. Can Willie Gay Jr. be on the field for 17 games, particularly against the AFC West foes, and take out the tight ends, to be able to turn and run with them? He has the athletic ability. He's shown it in fits and starts. He's made some plays, got his hands on a couple of passes last year. I think he had 3 interceptions?
Something like that, yeah.
At least 2. I'd have to go check his stats again. But for me, that's going to be the key because Nick Bolton is outplayed his coverage ability that I saw on his college film. Granted, it's only been 1 season, but he is a spot drop and play forward kind of guy. He's not a turn and run with the tight end type. I think that would be a disadvantage. And we don't know what we have in Leo Chanel yet. Elijah Lee's on this roster. Jermaine Carter's on this roster. So is Mike Rose, who I think will have a shot at making it. He is a coverage first linebacker. But it all comes down to Willie Gay, as far as I can tell, with the 2 tight end matchups. But that also ignores the other skill position matchup. one that is a very, very familiar foe. Right now, as I understand through OTAs, it's kind of a competition with Mac Hollins, but Demarcus Robinson looks to be a guy who's going to start ball games for the Las Vegas Raiders this season. I know
Thank you, Las Vegas.
Yeah, I know how the Chiefs fan base feels about that. If you're looking to make grilled cheese sandwiches or you need bread of some kind, I know a lot of folks feel that there's going to be opportunity to get that.
How much do you think that they're going to be looking at running some special drills for the Raiders?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and let's give Demarcus all the credit that he deserves. He's a good athlete. He can make big plays. And I think his best ability is ad-libbing for his quarterback. Now, Carr's not a huge scrambler, but when a play breaks down, he will extend it. And I think that in itself will give Demarcus Robinson opportunities to get some passes that the Chiefs need to be prepared for. But I'm certainly happy with their preparation level with Juan Thornhill, Justin Reed, and Brian Cook being able to take the ball away from those kinds of situations.
Yeah, and I think that when you start looking at the Raiders and their weapons, the question becomes, obviously, you have a three-headed monster with Davante Adams and Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow. That's going to be – yeah, no, I know you were. But I want to say that's going to be difficult to defend, and obviously you're going to have to pick your poison, and you're not going to be able to cover all three of them. You're going to be able to probably double at least one, if not two, and the third one's probably going to hurt you. The key, though, is – and this is what really happened with Kansas City in the past, is Demarcus Robinson was never really able to become that number 4 option. He always had the opportunity in Kansas City. He never took advantage of it. Is he going to be able to do that in Las Vegas with a lesser quarterback? I don't see it. So I'm not near as worried. I think you're going to have a single corner matchup in that regard. I'm not saying he can't make a couple of plays here and there. I'm not saying he won't beat the Chiefs and he won't have maybe even a big game against the Chiefs since it's his old team. But I don't think he's going to be a huge impact player for him this year.
Okay. Well, I don't know. So there's Adams. Who do you think is the next impact player then? Like if you're having to focus on it, because let's be honest, the elephant in the room is the last time Josh McDaniels was a head coach, he made a terrible mess of everything. McMinney,
yeah, and we haven't even talked about that yet.
Yeah, but I think it comes to this part because this is his side of the ball. You know what I mean? So like, I think Renfrow is criminally underrated, but is it enough?
Oh, I agree
to move that offense.
Yeah, no, I think he could be their number 2 weapon behind Adams. I think he could be that good. I think Waller is a fantastic tight end, but Renfrow is criminally underrated. I think he's a fantastic wide receiver. Kansas City has kept him in check kind of for the most part. I mean, I'm not going to say they've shut him down, but they haven't let him go off. So I think that plays into their favor a little bit. And they've seen him multiple times. Obviously, they know what they're going to get with Demarcus Robinson going up against them. So I think that also is going to help. I guess what I was really trying to say is that you have 3 weapons you're going to have to shut down. Robinson hasn't proven that he can be a guy that can go and take one-on-one matchups and win on a regular basis. So that's going to help you as a defense.
Now, in terms of the matchup in the secondary, I think this is a team that it's going to be very difficult because their 2 best weapons, like you just said, very well could be Adams and Renfrow. Snead needs to be on one of them. So this is one of the matchups in particular where I like the fact the Chiefs have been working Trent McDuffie in at the nickel some, at least in OTAs. If that continues in training camp, then I do feel like this is something where they're going to have to switch off. I do feel that McDuffie is more capable than the other Chiefs corners in terms of the underneath quick routes, the whips, the pivots, the things that Renfro's really good at. So it's got to be Snead and McDuffie on him, one or the other. And then the question is, can you really let McDuffie be on Adams? And I don't know that that's the case. We'll see what camp brings.
Yeah, definitely not this year. I wouldn't put him in that situation. Maybe he's able to grow into it as he matures and he learns more technique and he gets better. I wouldn't want that as your matchup. I think that Carr is going to attack that whenever he sees it if McDuffie's on him, especially if they play, when they play earlier on.
Agreed. Now, the advantage that Josh McDaniels has is on the defensive side of the ball. I think he's in a better situation than he was in Denver when he was here as a head coach. So we'll get into what that staff is and what that's going to look like after this. Now, there's a new sheriff in town, obviously, all the way around Las Vegas. But Patrick Graham is their new defensive coordinator. He's a former Patriots player, knows McDaniels well, has been a DC in the past for the Giants. I think it was a defensive line guy before that, I believe, in Miami. A defensive line is the strength of this defense, in my opinion. They've had some ups and downs, but here's what they don't talk about. No one's talking about. You have Patrick, the defensive coordinator, who is oriented towards the front, the defensive line group. You have Antonio Pierce, a very successful player and now a coach, as the linebackers coach. You got to feel good about that. And then you got Rex Ryan, who's going to be helping with the defensive backfield. I'm sorry, not Rex, it's Rob. Sorry, Rob. I do that all the time. But if you got a Ryan on your defense, you're going to be aggressive. There's absolutely no way around it. So the question becomes for me, if you're going to be aggressive, and I think that your secondary is the part that you got to be a little bit more concerned about, that leaves a lot of opportunities for the Chiefs to take advantage of, in my opinion. You got to deal with Max Crosby. We'll talk about him in a second. But you have Trayvon Mullen, who the Chiefs, I think, have done pretty well against. You have Jonathan Abram, who I'm not scared of. You have Trayvon Moehrig, who coming into his second season, I think you got to be aware of, but I don't think he changes the game. They brought Rocky Sin over from the Indianapolis Colts, and they got Nate Hobbs. None of that scares me, especially if Rob gets his way and they're going to blitz some of their corners and they're going to play press man. The Chiefs wide receiver core will eat them up, in my opinion, if they play aggressively.
No, I agree with that. I think that's a valid opinion. I think that you look at what they have defensively and their defensive backs, and I think that's going to be a big problem for them. They have to be able to get home. Their defensive line is absolutely their best positional group. And I just want to say really quick, I know we're talking defense. We didn't even talk about the Raiders' offensive line, which I think could be a problem for them. That's something that we're going to have to look at a little bit more later on.
That's fair.
Just because I think that they have some problems they've got to get figured out there. But
I mean,
talking about
when Alex Leatherwood's the plus side, then you're in trouble. Yeah, I mean, we definitely need to go back to that.
Yeah, I just was sitting here thinking, it was like, wait a second,
Sorry.
Their worst positional group. No, they have so many different weapons and they have so many different players this year than they've had in the past. So I get it. And we didn't talk about the coach for the Broncos that much. You have to talk about Josh McDaniels because he's going to be such a big part of what they're going to do. And you're right, he's an offensive mastermind. It didn't go well in Denver. There's going to be big questions on whether or not he can succeed in Las Vegas. And my big question when it comes to him is he's going to be under a lot of pressure. There's no way, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Just because of how bad it went for him the first time, he's going to be under a lot of pressure to win. And that's not going to help you, especially on defense. As you said, if they start pressing Kansas City and they try to be overly aggressive, Kansas City is going to just murder them.
Yeah.
And I really do believe that. I think that Mahomes will throw the ball over the top, whether it's to MVS or Hardman or maybe even Juju at times. Who knows who it's going to end up being over the top? It doesn't really matter. Kansas City is going to attack that if they're too aggressive, and they're going to take advantage. And I do think that Mahomes has the ability to hit the guys down the field, even if the pass rush is going to be on him. And that is something that you're going to have to watch with this game is how is Kansas City's pass blocking going to hold up against this pass rush? And that is going to be something that is going to be difficult. I'm really curious to see how Crosby handles this year because I was shocked that he had the game he had against Wiley last year. It just really shocked me.
They know each other very well, though.
I understand that, but it's just such different players. I mean, Crosby.
When you practice against somebody for years, though, you know his stuff.
Yeah, and I guess that's true. I guess I discounted that, but Crosby to me is one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. I'm not sure where I'd rank him if I was to sit down and think about it. Easily top 10. I don't know where he'd be other than that, but it's going to be hard. And okay, so what if Wiley's not the starter this year? Obviously, he's going to be able to give tips to Kennard or Niang, but that's going to be it's just not going to be the same.
And the big advantage for Max Crosby this year, especially if Orlando's late to camp in any way, is that you have Chandler Jones opposite him. He's actually got a bookend now. And so it does make it, much like the Chiefs have been striving to do for the last few years, it gives you a much more difficult way to double. And if you feel you have to double Max, it's got to be a tight end or a running back at this position, at this point. Because Chandler Jones, I think I wanted to see him in Kansas City. So like I think that's a significant upgrade. Their defensive interior is okay. I do like Hankins. I think he's a solid player. I know they're going through some changes there, but they got what I think is one of the steals of the draft in the 4th round in Neil Farrell from LSU, who brings a ton of energy. He has some inside moves that will work. Cleveland Farrell, their former 1st round pick, Max was a 4th round pick. He's now a backup. So like that tells you like how they've come along.
But
Kenny Young's
but
there.
Be fair about that. Farrell hasn't really shown much.
True.
I mean, he was a backup to Ngakoue last year, and I agree with you. I think Chandler Jones is a true bookend for Crosby. Question is, he's 32. When's he going to start slowing down? We haven't seen it yet, and maybe it doesn't happen this season. Maybe he's able to continue doing what he's been doing, and that would be great for the Raiders. It's just going to be a question. I understand why you wanted him in Kansas City. I wouldn't have minded him in Kansas City, but the money is going to catch up at some point. And now they're paying Derek Carr what they're paying him. That's going to make roster building even more difficult over the next couple of seasons.
True. And the interesting thing for me is that the weak point on their defense, in my opinion, again, is the linebacker level, the off-ball linebackers. Denzel Perryman's getting older there. Jam Brown. Divine Diablo is probably going to be their nickel linebacker. Great safety. I think they're trying to bulk up. I haven't talked to Q about how many reps he's getting, but I think in the end, he's the guy with the next talent level to be there, which then begs the question, are they going to try to double with a safety on Travis? That's going to be the big question. But they have talent. The question comes back to Carr. In the end of the day, it's all about Carr, just as much as it is all about Patrick in Kansas City. You have to do that. My only question for you. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Does Josh McDaniels make Carr better, or is Carr a finished product? Is he what he is?
I think that if you look back at the Raiders 2 years ago, I think they did a huge disservice to Carr by trading away some of his best offensive linemen and really started to give him a worse scenario when it came to having a pocket in front of him to be able to throw. He had a better year last year than I expected him to have, and maybe he's able to continue that this year because he has more weapons and he has more things going for him. The question really is going to become, does Josh McDaniels learn from what he lost or from the abysmal failure he had in Denver? If he's able to learn from that and he's able to call plays and he's able to allow people to do their jobs and not overstep his bounds or overstep as a coach, then maybe he's able to do better. As far as Carr is concerned, he has no more excuses at this point. Like, he's not, in my mind, I don't think he's ever been a top 10 QB in the NFL. I still don't think he's there. I think he can be an okay QB. I think he is as good as the players around him, and he's probably just a little bit above average. Does he have the ability to play better? Maybe. But again, I go back to what I said in the first segment with Davante Adams. Davante Adams was so good in Green Bay because Aaron Rodgers gave him the ability to do what only Davante Adams could do, and he gave him the chance for it. If Derek Carr does that and he misses by inches or a foot it's not going to turn out the same way. It's going to be turnovers, and that's going to hurt Las Vegas. And I think it's going to be what's going to make them struggle this year is I think Carr is going to try to put the ball in Adams' hands the best he can. I just don't know that it's going to work out as well as it did for Adams at Green Bay.
Well, I'll tell you this. The bottom line for me is it's a narrow margin. I would put Carr in the top 15, top 14 probably.
Probably. Like I said, just above average, but not.
Yeah,
I don't think he's top 10.
But we have to remember that was a playoff roster last year. Mm-hmm. So as much as we can say he's probably the 4th quarterback in this particular division, that may mean that they're the 4th team in this division. I still think they can hit 500. I still think they're very good enough to beat up other divisions around the NFL.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that they're going to be bad. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I am trying to say is I don't think that they're going to be huge competition for Kansas City this year for multiple reasons. Number one is going to be Josh McDaniels, and is he going to be able to move past where he was when he was a head coach before? And two, how does Davante Adams fit with Derek Carr in the NFL? It's different in college when you're not going up against premier athletes every single game. You're going up against premier athletes every single game, and Derek Carr just doesn't have the skill set Aaron Rodgers does. And I'm not saying that many do, but that this is a game of inches, and it really is going to become a bigger issue for Davante Adams than it's been in his career so far.
That's fair. We're going to see how it comes out, folks. Let us know what you think. What do you think the Raiders do? Leave your comments on YouTube. Leave them in the Spotify reviews as well as the Apple Podcast reviews. We have all that for you. We hope that you enjoy your weekend. It is a holiday. We will not have a show for the 4th. We'll be back with you for Tuesday. I'm moving this week, so it's going to be a crazy schedule. Of course, in the middle of that, Orlando Brown is likely to happen now because of all these things. So don't miss a show. We will have reaction for you, and we will have a slate. Happy 4th of July. And for all of you serving out there, I hope that you get a break and enjoy your Independence Day as well. We will talk to you following the holiday on Tuesday. Take care of yourselves, and we'll talk to you then.